Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Before I begin today, a big thank you to Mark for the virtual gift voucher. Thank you very much, my friend, I really appreciate it, thank you. Oh boy, I hope everyone enjoyed the little teaser yesterday for a certain upcoming week special. If you haven't, you might just want to check it out. But today we have another great little mystery story. I enjoyed our look at the Adeptus Arbites last week so much, I thought it's only right we dive into the mysterious goings-on a little more, with the mystery of Camp Racnus. Spoiler warning to begin, the events we are discussing today are from the short story Lassitude, and this is a free short story on the Warhammer community website, as part of the upcoming Pariah chapter of the Psychic Awakening campaign. As always, I really recommend you read the story for yourself first, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. If you're new to the community website, I really recommend it, as it's the best place to get the news straight from GW themselves, and enjoy great free stories such as this. I will put a link in the description as always. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now this story takes place on the world of Thrule Tertias. Two prospectors, Laria and Freyg, are journeying along a rocky trackway at quite a pace, their vehicle spewing a trail of dust up into the air as they go. They bicker with each other as they hurtle along, Freyg wanting to try to contact the camp again over the Vox. Laria busy trying to keep the Ridge Runner under control. She's got better things on her mind. Normally she wouldn't let him irritate her, but today she couldn't help it. And the banging headache she has isn't helping. And we're given an interesting insight into her mind here, as she describes her feelings over the past few days as ranging from paranoia to complete lack of interest, feeling like she has a mining pick embedded between her eyes. So there's clearly something not quite right. And the fact that the camp has not responded to the last 6 Vox attempts certainly doesn't help matters. It was odd that Racnus camp had gone quiet. In truth, Laria shared Freyg's sense of gnawing disquiet about the whole business. Thrule Tertias was an unforgiving world of hidden fissures and whirling gritstorms. It was customary for each mining camp to maintain hourly Vox check-ins with its prospector teams. Letting contact slip for even a few hours could have fatal consequences. Not to mention attracting substantial punitive tithes from the administratum if proper record keeping fell behind. Laria jumped as the Vox crackled suddenly to life, then glowered as she realised it was just Bosk calling from where his own Ridge Runner trailed, 20 yards behind. Still no word from camp? Over? Oh, they've been chatty as a drunk rattling, Bosk. Just none of us figured to cut you in on the conversation. Laria voxed back. She couldn't be bothered to keep the sneer out of her voice, nor to observe proper Vox discipline. Not like you, she admonished herself. Only room for one sour mouth in this runner, and Freyg's claimed that spot. Sorry, Bosk, she added, hating how lame she sounded to her own ears. Can't shift this damned headache, and I'm worried about camp going quiet. Over. Emperor don't need to forgive what he don't hear, La, Bosk replied. And even this habitual platitude grated on her nerves. And I agree, it ain't right. Over. Laria could have reassured the older prospector, but she couldn't summon the effort or optimism. Instead, she cut the Vox channel and drove on in dismal silence, through the swirling dust and glaring light of Thrule's angry star. Camp was only a mile away now. We'll get some answers soon enough. Ignoring the panicked little voice at the back of her mind, whispering about Xeno raiders or macro Talpa attacks, Laria would find out what was going on. Then hopefully, she could dispel the stifling sense of oppression that had been weighing on her chest this past week. It doesn't matter how many centuries pass or how much the human race evolves. It always seems that the feeling you get in your gut, that instinct when something isn't right, is always the one you should listen to. They don't have to wait long, however, as the camp begins to come into view. At first appearance, all seems well. There's sentries in the towers and no sign of trouble. But as the closer they get, however, the doubts begin to return. The sentries aren't exactly living up to expectation. They're not even paying attention, staring out into nothing. Some are even sleeping. And these aren't just undisciplined conscripts. They know Overseer Supter was a disciplinarian. This is not usual behaviour. And worse still, they've stopped working on the dig site. Reaching the gates, Laria gets a momentary feeling of dread hit her stomach as she waits for the gates to open. The servitor turrets swivel in their direction. But after what seems like an eternity, the klaxon sounds and the gates open, letting the convoy inside. Rather than the relief they'd hoped for, however, the sense of unease only gets worse as they pass through the compound. Miners and workers standing about in the night, but motionless, as if they've forgotten what they should be doing. Staring into nothingness. Laria barely avoids running down an oblivious worker as he stumbles across the road right before them. What is happening here, she thought, as frightened by how quickly her own anger had fizzled to nothing as by the vacant stares of the miners. Bosk had pulled up behind her, and he and Cardi were clambering out of their Ridge Runner. She frowned as Bosk helped Cardi out of the vehicle. The youthful apprentice was normally the most sprightly of them all. Something ain't right, said Bosk, as the four of them gathered beside Laria and Fraig's vehicle. I don't feel right. Cardi definitely ain't right, and half these spoil rats definitely ain't either. What's going on here, La? Laria's irritation surged again, but the feeling was comparatively faint. Idly, she noticed that her fingertips were tingling and numb. Why should I know, Bosk? She asked, and was shocked at the almost pleading note she heard in her voice. Supter, said Fraig, swaying then gathering himself with a blink of surprise. Supter will know what's going on. Now this is like the start of some kind of thriller or horror movie. Something is clearly affecting the workers of the camp. The entire population has become akin to mindless zombies. Very different to the refugees we saw that the Arbites had to deal with on the world of Mesmok. You get the sense that this is something else entirely. Entering into Supter's office, Laria almost gags at the smell. Uneaten meals simply left to go off. The overseer himself looking as if he hasn't washed or changed in days. Simply sitting in his chair, looking as if he hasn't eaten in days either. His hand is bandaged, the wound seeping through to pool on his desk. Laria almost forgets why she came in, before Supter speaks, recognising Team 4. But he doesn't even manage to reach his quill, giving up with the effort. Laria questions his wound, beginning to struggle with her own thoughts. And Supter's muddled reply is where things get even more interesting. 3 days ago, he said. 3 days? Stefan had an episode. Screaming about being watched, about being smothered. Kept shouting about a shroud falling. Took one of the cutters and wrecked the Mastervox. I tried to stop him and Supter trailed off and his eyes swam out of focus. So a shroud falling, being watched and smothered. The plot thickens. Perhaps some kind of psychic effect? Bosk questions the overseer about what's going on. The only response, a few words about the Great Tear. But Bosk doesn't seem to buy it. The tear's been there for a long time now, and the Emperor's kept them safe so far. And with that, a massive explosion racks the compound, and the group head back through the door, to a scene they can't begin to comprehend. The compound is on fire. One of the generators seemingly exploded. Yet as the fire spreads, the people aren't even reacting. Still just standing or laying there, completely emotionless as the flames spread towards them. Something dark then streaks past overhead, but Laria's too lethargic to see it clearly as another explosion rips the compound, sending her over the railing to the ground below. Dust and smoke billowed around Laria as she lay unmoving in the dirt. She mustered the strength to swivel her eyes in her head and saw Freyg lying near her, with his head tilted at a horrible angle. The big man's eyes were glassy. Blood dribbled from his nostrils and spilled between his teeth, where he'd bitten through his tongue. Won't be complaining anymore, she thought, now barely coherent. Laria couldn't frame any kind of response when a large, dark shape loomed over her. Thrule's angry starlight glinted on burnished metal, glinted in cruel, lens-like eyes. But Laria was beyond making sense of what she saw. She couldn't even bring herself to care when the figure reached down and gripped her by her hair, nor when it turned and began to drag her broken body through the dust towards the dark mouth of the bore mine. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. All Laria wanted to do was sleep. Now what or who was that? Starlight glinted on burnished metal and glinted in cruel lens-like eyes. Necrons obviously spring to mind with their burnished metal description, and I guess you could describe their eyes like lenses. But why would they be taking her towards the mine? I know that they are the most likely candidate, but that description could easily be applied to Iron Warriors too. Burnished metal and lens eyes. Did perhaps the miners unearth a tomb? Could they have inadvertently awakened a tomb world of the Necrons? Or is this world somehow of importance to the Necrons? Something built or stored here millions of years ago? What is going on in that mine? And what of the symptoms of the miners? This mindlessness? Does that ring any bells? Because it doesn't scream Necrons to me. Unless there's something new coming. What do you think, guys? Is this the Necrons? Or is there another foe responsible? And what on earth has happened to the miners? As always, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. A huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support really means a lot to me. It truly does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.